everybody. Welcome to our Discovery series. Today I want to talk about another name of God. The one that I want to focus on today is Yahweh Jireh. You know, the meaning of the word Yahweh Jireh means God will provide. Now, I'm not sure you know, but there are different types of name of God, and some are personal and some are general. Yahweh itself is a very personal name that we give to our God. And another name that we use for God is Elohim. That is a more general type of name that we give to God. So Yahweh, if you read in the Bible, the English translation is the Lord. Okay, and Elohim, the English translation, you find it's called God. So Yahweh. So if we dig a little bit deeper about Yahweh Jireh, and we see the original word, the meaning, Yahweh itself means God. That's what we talk about, and Jireh comes from the root word Ra, which means to see to it or to provide. Okay, in other words, provision, something that is done beforehand. Isn't that interesting to see that Yahweh Jireh means God has prepared beforehand for us things that are important for our lives. So Yahweh Jireh, God has made provision for our lives. And when I think about making provision, okay, I think about my wife and I. We do missionary work in Malaysia, and we constantly travel between Singapore and Malaysia. We do that every week. One of the things that we always have to do is to prepare beforehand for our travels. And one of the things that my wife does is that she is the one in charge. Okay, in charge of all the passports, keys, all the very nitty-gritty important things, packing the clothes and such. Now I'm in charge of technical stuff. Okay, making sure I have the laptop, all the wires, and that's it. But I really appreciate my wife, because she prepares everything, the passports, all the passes, all the keys beforehand, so that I can feel safe. I can feel, that when I go over to Malaysia, all the stuff will be already prepared beforehand. Okay, and that is really wonderful. Of course, I remember a particular trip where my wife didn't go with me. I won't tell the story too long, and because my wife wasn't there and I did not prepare beforehand, you know what happened? I forgot to bring my passport, so I had to turn around and go back to get the passport. So you get the whole idea. Provision, prepare beforehand. So Yahweh Jireh, that term means God has prepared beforehand provision for us. Isn't that a beautiful concept, that God thinks of us and makes sure everything is taken care of, so that our lives will be secure and will be adequately provided. So let's read the theme passage in the book of Genesis, chapter 22, verse 12, to 14. Here is where Abraham, God tested Abraham and said, Abraham, you bring Isaac to the mountain to sacrifice Isaac, your one and only son. So you can imagine how terrified Abraham was, thinking that, oh my goodness, I'm going to sacrifice my one and only son. But yet, as we read this passage, we can see how God actually prepared beforehand for Abraham. Now, of course, we looking back, we see that, but for Abraham, he didn't know that. Okay, for him, it was a scary, scary thing. But let's read that passage so that we can understand this meaning, Yahweh Jireh, a little bit better. Okay, let's read in verse 12. Do not lay your hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horn. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide, Yahweh Jireh. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. So we see from this passage itself, God says sacrifice Isaac, and when Abraham brought Isaac and was about to sacrifice Isaac, God intervened. Over there was a ram already prepared beforehand. Isn't that amazing? Okay, God just wanted to test Abraham to see his faith. But way ahead of time, God prepared a ram for him beforehand for the actual sacrifice. And that is the same thing that God does for our lives. So often we look at our lives and we sometimes wonder, is God really with us? Why am I going through this trouble? Why do I have to sacrifice this? Why is this so difficult? Well, learn from Abraham. And to really have faith in our God, the God who has prepared beforehand for us provision to keep our lives safe and to really provide everything that we need for our life. Okay, thank you very much, brothers and sisters. I'll see you again